My name is Clara, and if you had asked me a year ago, I would have told you that my life was exactly what I had dreamed of. A beautiful house in a quiet neighborhood, a loving husband who worked hard to provide for us, and evenings spent surrounded by the warmth of family photos and his endless collection of paintings. People used to say we looked like the perfect couple. I smiled at that, perhaps even believed it myself. Javier, my husband, is a man who has always been admired. Tall, charming, eloquent. He could walk into a room and instantly win over anyone. He was the kind of man people trusted without hesitation. And I, naive enough, trusted him with my entire being. I used to say that if there was one person in this world who would never lie to me, it was Javier. How wrong I was. Our home was filled with his paintings. Javier never painted himself, but he collected them obsessively. Landscapes, portraits, abstracts. He said each one told a story. Art, he used to say, is where people hide their truths. At the time, I thought it was a beautiful line. I didn't realize he was confessing more than he intended. There was one particular painting that hung in our living room, a large, bold piece with dark blues and silvers. He bought it years ago from a small gallery, and it quickly became his favorite. He would straighten it almost every evening, as if it needed constant attention. I always thought it strange how protective he was over a simple frame. I joked once that he cared more about that painting than about me. He laughed, kissed me on the forehead, and said, "Some things are irreplaceable." I thought he meant the painting. Later, I would understand. Looking back now, there were signs. Nights when he came home late, claiming meetings had dragged on. Trips he said were for work, always just a little too last minute. The way his phone never left his pocket, even when he slept. At the time, I brushed it all aside. Love makes you blind, they say. I was the perfect example of that blindness. It wasn't until one ordinary afternoon that everything began to unravel. Javier had left for a business trip, and I decided to finally redecorate the living room. I wanted to surprise him, to make the house feel warmer, more alive. I started moving furniture, dusting shelves, and then my eyes landed on that enormous painting. I hesitated. It was heavy, and I knew how much it meant to him, but something inside urged me to take it down. My hands shook slightly as I lifted it off the wall. Dust clung to the frame, proof that it had not been moved in years. But then I noticed something unusual. The back of the painting wasn't flush against the frame. There was a small bulge, almost as if something had been tucked behind it. I frowned, my heart quickening. Carefully, I turned the painting over. And there it was, taped securely to the back of the frame, a plain yellowed envelope. No label, no name, just sitting there like a silent secret waiting to be discovered. I didn't know it yet, but inside that envelope lay the truth that would shatter the life I thought I had. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the envelope as if it might vanish if I blinked. My hands trembled. It was such a simple thing, thin paper, a bit of tape holding it in place, and yet it pulsed with a kind of menace, as though I already knew that whatever hid inside was going to change everything. For a brief second, I considered putting the painting back, leaving the envelope exactly where I found it, and pretending I had never seen it. Some truths, I thought, are better left hidden. But then the other voice inside me, the one that had grown louder in recent months, the one whispering that Javier wasn't the man I believed him to be, pushed me forward. I peeled the tape away and pulled the envelope free. It felt heavier than I expected. My breath caught as I slid a finger under the flap and tore it open. Photographs spilled into my hand. The first one nearly slipped through my fingers. It was Javier, unmistakably him, but not the Javier I knew. His arm was around a woman, younger than me, with dark hair cascading down her back. They were in a restaurant, glasses of wine between them, their heads close together. He was smiling, the kind of smile I hadn't seen on his face in years, carefree and intimate. My chest tightened. I flipped to the next photo, and the next. Different places. A hotel balcony, a beach at sunset, even our own city, where I had believed he was working late. The woman was always there, always close, always. His. I felt sick. My knees weakened, and I sank into the armchair, clutching the pictures as though they were poisonous, but unable to let them go. There was more in the envelope, letters, folded neatly, tied together with a ribbon. My hands shook as I untied it and opened the first page. Mi amor, it began. My love. The words burned. I read on, my eyes racing, tears threatening to blur the ink. He wrote of moments stolen, promises whispered. He described their secret plans, dreams of a future together, one where I did not exist. The date stretched back 3 years. 3 years of lies. 3 years of living with a man who shared his heart, his body, his promises with someone else while I was playing the role of the dutiful wife. I dropped the letters, my chest heaving as if I couldn't draw air. The room spun around me, and I pressed a hand to my mouth to stop the sob that clawed its way up my throat. For a moment, I hated myself. How had I not seen this? How had I ignored the signs, convinced myself that the long hours and sudden trips were just the price of a successful man's career? The envelope still wasn't empty. With a dread I could hardly bear, I reached inside again. This time, what I pulled out wasn't a photo or a letter. It was a set of documents. Official papers, neatly folded. My eyes scanned the bold letters at the top. Contrato de compraventa. A purchase agreement. And then I saw the name. Her name, not mine. Javier had bought an apartment. Not for us. Not for me. For her. My heart shattered into pieces, but beneath the devastation, a flicker of something new stirred inside me. Anger. I don't remember how long I sat there, staring at those papers. Minutes? Hours? Time had dissolved into a heavy fog that pressed against my chest. The apartment purchase agreement trembled in my hands, the ink blurring as tears spilled onto the page. Her name, Isabel Morales. A stranger, yet suddenly the shadow that had been haunting my marriage for years. Her name was printed over and over, on contracts, on receipts, on notes tucked between the photographs. She wasn't a fling, not some passing distraction. She was. Permanent. At least, that's what Javier had intended. I pressed the papers to the coffee table, my fingers digging into the wood. Every memory of our marriage, every smile, every anniversary dinner, every whispered "I love you" replayed in my head, and each one now felt poisoned. And then the flashbacks came. The late-night calls he would silence and dismiss as work emergencies. The trips that seemed oddly frequent, always with vague explanations. The way he would come home with a different cologne clinging to his shirt, a scent that wasn't mine. I had noticed. Of course I had noticed. But I buried it, smothered it with trust and love and the desperate need to believe in the man I thought I married. My stomach twisted with a mix of shame and fury. How long had I been his fool? I picked up one of the letters again, forcing myself to read through the flowing, intimate handwriting. Words of devotion, of passion, of longing. Promises that he would leave soon, that their time would come. Sigh. Each line was another knife twisting deeper, but with every stab, my pain hardened into something sharper. I wasn't just betrayed. I was being erased. The apartment contract was proof. Javier wasn't planning to keep 2 lives forever. No, he was preparing to walk away, to discard me like a broken ornament and build a new existence with her. I imagined him smiling as he pictured their future together, imagined how easily he had been deceiving me while holding her in his arms. For the first time, I felt something new. Clarity. Javier wasn't who I thought he was. Our marriage wasn't what I thought it was. And my life, the life I had devoted myself to, was built on lies carefully hidden behind the frame of a painting. I stood, pacing the room, clutching the papers to my chest. My breath came fast and shallow. What was I supposed to do? Confront him immediately? Wait for him to come home from his trip and throw the evidence in his face? Or should I stay silent, bide my time, and plan? I thought of his words about art. Art is where people hide their truths. Now, his truth was laid bare before me, and I swore I would never let him hide anything from me again. As I gathered the photos, letters, and documents, placing them neatly back into the envelope, a strange calm settled over me. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Javier thought he could deceive me, replace me, and still win. But he had made one critical mistake. He left his perfect lie in my hands, and I was going to use it. The envelope burned in my hands like a secret too heavy to carry. I knew confronting Javier the moment he returned would be satisfying, but it would also be reckless. Men like him, clever, calculating, used to playing double lives, they always had excuses ready. He'd deny, twist, accuse me of snooping, of overreacting. No, if I wanted the truth, undeniable truth, I had to dig deeper. So I started with the obvious, his phone. Javier guarded his phone like a soldier guarding state secrets. It never left his side, not even at night. He slept with it under his pillow. But with him away on business, the device was finally out of my reach. I cursed myself for never daring to look before. Still, I wasn't helpless. I had his laptop. For years, it had been the one thing I didn't touch. He worked from it, managed his accounts, wrote emails. But now, with him gone, it sat on his desk like an unopened vault. My hands shook as I opened it, half expecting passwords I couldn't crack. But then I remembered, Javier was predictable in his arrogance. His password had always been the same. The date of our wedding. The screen blinked to life. What I found inside froze me. There were entire folders I had never seen before, buried under misleading names. Invoices 2018, tax docs, projects. But when I clicked them open, my breath caught. Photos, videos, messages. Javier hadn't just been careless. He had been meticulous. He documented everything, as though keeping a diary of his betrayal. Photos with Isabel in hotel rooms, dinners, vacations, videos of them laughing together, kissing, sharing moments that should have belonged to us. There were even records of money transfers, proof of him financing her lifestyle, paying her rent, buying her gifts. I sat back, overwhelmed, my heart thundering in my chest. Every file was another nail in the coffin of the life I thought I had. But as I scrolled, I discovered something that made my blood run cold. Hidden among the digital love letters and photographs were documents labeled divorce plan. I clicked, and the truth unfolded. Step by step, Javier had outlined his intentions. How he would manipulate finances to leave me with nothing. How he had been moving assets quietly, selling off shares, opening new accounts under Isabel's name. He had consulted lawyers, strategized how to paint me as financially dependent, even unfit to maintain our home. He wasn't just planning to leave me. He was planning to ruin me. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The betrayal was no longer just about love. It was about destruction. But instead of breaking, something inside me hardened. If Javier thought I was weak, if he believed I'd crumble under the weight of his betrayal, he had underestimated me. I copied every file, every photograph, every damning piece of evidence onto a hidden drive. My hands were steady now, my heart cold with determination. By the time Javier returned, I wouldn't just confront him. I would be ready. This wasn't just about heartbreak anymore. This was about survival and revenge. When Javier finally came back from his so-called business trip, I was ready. Or at least, I thought I was. My stomach churned with nerves as I heard his keys in the door, the familiar jingle that once meant comfort, but now felt like the signal of a predator entering my space. I forced myself to stay calm. The evidence I had collected was hidden away, locked in my desk drawer under piles of documents he would never touch. On the surface, I had to look like the same wife he had left behind, trusting, oblivious, blind. He stepped inside, suitcase in hand, his smile practiced and charming. "Clara?" he said warmly, leaning down to kiss my cheek. His lips lingered, but I felt nothing. "Welcome home," I replied, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. He walked into the living room, glancing around as if nothing had changed, but I noticed his eyes flicker toward the wall where the painting had hung. For a split second, his face stiffened, just barely, before he recovered with a casual smile. "You moved the painting?" he asked lightly. My pulse spiked. He noticed. Of course he noticed. "Yes," I said quickly, smoothing my voice into something innocent. "It looked crooked. I just straightened it a bit." He studied me for a moment, too long, then nodded. Good eye." I forced a laugh, but inside my heart pounded. Did he suspect? We ate dinner together that night, like we always did after his trips. He told me stories about meetings, contracts, people whose names I didn't know. Lies. All of them, I realized now. Every word he spoke was a performance. And yet I played my role too, nodding, smiling, asking questions. But beneath the surface, I studied him. The way his phone never left his side. How he typed quick messages under the table when he thought I wasn't looking. The slight impatience in his tone when I asked too many questions. Before, I would have ignored it, convinced myself it was stress, work, fatigue. Now, every twitch of his mouth, every glance at the clock, every sigh was evidence of guilt. After dinner, he excused himself to shower. As the water ran, I stood by the door, listening to the rhythm of his movements, the hum of a man who believed he was in control. But I wasn't the same woman anymore. When he emerged, towel around his waist, he kissed my forehead and whispered, "It's good to be home." I smiled up at him, hiding the rage in my chest. "I'm glad you're back." That night, lying beside him in bed, I stared at the ceiling while he drifted into sleep. His breathing deepened, steady, peaceful. He had no idea that the woman beside him already knew everything. No idea that his perfect lie had been ripped open. And no idea that the game had only just begun. The next morning, sunlight poured into the kitchen, but it couldn't chase away the shadow sitting between us. Javier sat at the table, sipping his coffee, scrolling through his phone with that furrowed brow he always wore when he wanted to look important. I watched him carefully, noting every flicker of his eyes, every pause of his thumb over the screen. I had promised myself not to rush. Revenge required patience, calculation, and timing. If I confronted him too soon, he would twist the truth, spin his lies, and I might lose the one advantage I had: knowledge. So I decided to test him. "Did you get everything sorted with your meetings?" I asked, sliding his plate across the table. My voice was casual, playful even. He didn't look up. "Yes. Exhausting, but productive. We might close the deal soon." I tilted my head, pretending curiosity. "Which company was it again? The one in Madrid or Barcelona?" His thumb froze mid-scroll. For a moment too brief for most to notice, his mask cracked. Then he smiled, smooth as ever. "Madrid! Of course! I told you, remember?" I smiled back sweetly. Yes, of course. But he had never said Madrid. He had mentioned Barcelona before leaving. A small inconsistency, nothing that would raise suspicion in his mind, but to me, it was confirmation. He was lying even about the lies. Later that day, while he was in his study taking a conference call, I slipped into the living room with his briefcase. My hands trembled, but I forced myself to be methodical. He always carried that case as if it were his lifeline. Inside, I found the usual: contracts, pens, a charger. But tucked in a side pocket was a folded receipt. A hotel in Valencia. 2 nights, paid in cash. Dated the exact days of his so-called business trip. I slipped the receipt back where I found it, my heart pounding so loudly, I thought he might hear it through the walls. That night, I set my first real trap. While Javier showered, I placed my phone deliberately on the counter near his. I had installed a small app, one that mirrored nearby Bluetooth signals. It was a risk, but I needed to know. When his phone lit up with a new message, the notification appeared on mine. Just a name. Isabel. My blood ran cold, but I forced my face into calmness when he came back into the room. "Everything okay?" he asked, toweling his hair. "Yes," I said softly, smiling as if nothing had changed. Inside, however, everything had changed. Now I had proof that Isabel wasn't just a name on paper, not just a ghost from contracts and letters. She was real, present, and still part of his life. As I lay in bed beside him again that night, my mind raced. Each clue brought me closer, but I needed more. If I wanted to destroy his perfect lie, I couldn't just catch him. I had to trap him in it. The morning after my trap confirmed everything, I woke with a strange new clarity. For the first time in weeks, I felt in control. Javier thought he was moving pieces across a board only he understood, but I had started to see the whole game, and I knew my next move. I scheduled a discreet appointment with a lawyer. Not one of Javier's colleagues or anyone connected to his firm. He had too many friends in that world. I chose someone recommended by an old friend, someone neutral, outside of Javier's reach. Sitting across from the attorney, a woman named Teresa with sharp eyes and a calm, steady voice, I laid out part of the truth. Not everything, not yet. Just enough. My husband, I began, my voice carefully even, has been making financial moves without me. I have reason to believe he's hiding assets. If he were to file for divorce, what protections would I have? Teresa leaned back in her chair, studying me. "Do you have evidence?" My heart thudded. Evidence, yes. More than I ever wanted. "Yes," I said firmly. "Documents, transfers, even recordings." Her eyebrows lifted slightly, impressed. "Then you're already ahead of most. Many women don't prepare until it's too late. If what you say is true, he may be trying to leave you with nothing, but with evidence, you can stop him." Stop him. The words echoed in my chest like a battle cry. She explained how hidden assets could be traced, how financial investigators could follow the trail, how pre-divorce moves could be challenged in court. The law, she told me, was on my side, if I had the patience to gather everything before striking. Patience. That word again. My greatest enemy, and now, my greatest weapon. When I left Teresa's office, I didn't feel broken anymore. I felt armed. That evening, I returned home before Javier, who had texted that he would be working late. My lips curled in a bitter smile. I knew exactly what working late meant now. Instead of confronting him, I poured myself a glass of wine and opened my laptop. This time, I wasn't looking for love letters or hotel receipts. I was searching for numbers, hidden accounts, investment transfers, contracts written in names I didn't recognize. And I found them, dozens of them. Slowly, methodically, I began copying, saving, cataloging. My own secret archive. By the time Javier came home, smelling faintly of perfume that wasn't mine, I was ready. He kissed me on the cheek, murmured an excuse about a last-minute dinner with a client. I smiled sweetly, brushing his hair back. "You work so hard, Javier. I don't know what I'd do without you." He chuckled, smug in his little performance, and disappeared into the bedroom. But inside, I was already writing the ending to his story. Because soon, Javier would learn that while he had been planning my ruin, I had been building something much stronger: my survival and my revenge. Her name had haunted me ever since I saw it flash across Javier's phone. Isabel. A simple word, yet it carried the weight of betrayal, the echo of years stolen from my life. Who was she? A stranger? A colleague? A woman who knew everything, or nothing at all? I couldn't move forward without finding out. For days, I watched Javier's routines with sharper eyes. Every time his phone buzzed, every excuse about late meetings, every receipt crumpled in his pockets, I was collecting fragments of a puzzle. Then, finally, a clear lead, a message notification that my little app mirrored onto my phone. "Tomorrow, same cafe, 7 p.m. My heart pounded. It was her. The next evening, I dressed simply, slipping into a plain sweater and jeans, clothes that wouldn't draw attention. I arrived at the cafe early, choosing a seat in the corner where I could see without being seen. My hands shook around my cup of tea as I waited, and then she walked in. Isabel. You imagine the other woman to be some kind of villainess, glamorous, predatory, oozing arrogance. But Isabel was ordinary. Dark hair pulled back in a neat bun, a modest dress, a stack of folders tucked under her arm. She looked nervous, almost timid, as she sat at a corner table and checked her phone. Minutes later, Javier walked in. My Javier. He leaned down and kissed her cheek, like it was the most natural thing in the world. My chest constricted, but I forced myself to stay still, to watch, to learn. They spoke in low voices, their heads bent close. At first, it was casual, smiles, small laughs. But then Isabel's face changed. She looked worried, asking questions. Javier waved her off, his tone dismissive, but she pressed on. She didn't look like a woman in love. She looked like a woman trapped. I couldn't hear everything, but I caught fragments when their voices lifted. Promised me security. Don't drag me into this. Clara will never know. My blood boiled, but I stayed put. This wasn't the moment to reveal myself. Not yet. After half an hour, Javier left, kissing her cheek again before disappearing into the night. Isabel stayed behind, her hand gripping her coffee cup so tightly I thought it might shatter. She looked miserable. That was when I made my move. I approached her table slowly, my heart hammering in my chest. Isabel? I asked softly. Her head snapped up, eyes wide. For a moment she didn't speak, just stared at me as if she had seen a ghost. Yes, she whispered, her voice trembling. I slid into the chair across from her, my gaze steady. You don't know me, but I know Javier, and I think you and I need to talk. Her face drained of color. She glanced toward the door, then back at me, panic flickering in her eyes. And in that moment, I realized something I hadn't expected. Isabel wasn't my enemy. She was another piece of Javier's lie. For a moment, the cafe around us seemed to vanish. The clinking of cups, the low murmur of conversations, all of it faded as Isabel stared at me, frozen. Her lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. I'm Clara, I said finally, my voice steady, though my hands trembled beneath the table. Javier's wife. Her eyes widened with horror. She dropped her gaze, whispering, I didn't know you would. She stopped, biting her lip hard enough to draw blood. Didn't know I would what? I pressed. She looked up at me, and in that instant, I saw the truth in her eyes. Guilt, shame, fear. Didn't know you would find out. For a long silence, we just stared at each other. Then she exhaled, the words tumbling out in a rush. It wasn't supposed to be like this. He told me your marriage was dead, that you were cold, controlling, that you didn't care about him anymore. He said he was only staying for appearances. I believed him. I was stupid. Her hands shook as she gripped the coffee cup. She wasn't a seductress, not a calculated rival. She was a woman deceived, just like me. But then her voice dropped, and what she said next made my blood run cold. Clara! It's not just about us. He's been planning something bigger. He told me once, when he was drunk, that he had set everything up so when he finally leaves you, you'll have nothing. No house, no money, nothing. He laughed about it, said you'd learn your place. My stomach twisted, fury clawing through me. It was worse than I thought. Not only had he betrayed me, he had plotted my ruin as if it were some kind of game. And you went along with this? I demanded, my voice sharper than I intended. Tears welled in her eyes. No. I tried to leave him, more than once. But he always pulled me back. Threats, promises. He said he'd ruin me too, that he'd make sure I could never work again. He has. Power, Clara. Connections. The words hit me like a storm. For years, I had seen Javier's charm, his influence, his ability to bend people to his will. But hearing it from her, hearing how he had ensnared us both in his web, made me realize just how dangerous he was. I leaned closer, lowering my voice. Isabel, listen to me. You don't owe him loyalty. Not anymore. If we work together, we can stop him. She looked at me, doubt and hope warring in her expression. Stop him? How? I smiled, though there was no warmth in it. With the one thing men like Javier always underestimate, evidence. And I have plenty. With your help, we can gather even more. For a moment, she was silent. Then she nodded slowly, a spark of resolve flickering in her eyes. Okay, she whispered. I'll help you. As I walked out of the cafe that night, the weight on my chest felt lighter. For the first time, I wasn't alone in this fight. Javier thought he was untouchable, that his lies were flawless. But he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. He had left two betrayed women standing together. The plan took weeks to perfect. Every night, after Javier left for his meetings, I stayed awake in my study, organizing files, labeling folders, building a fortress of evidence. Bank transfers, hidden accounts, rental contracts under false names. Every stone he thought he had hidden, I had unearthed. Isabel played her part too, slipping me screenshots of his messages, recordings of his empty promises. Together, we pieced him apart. But evidence alone wasn't enough. Javier was too clever, too slippery. He'd deny, twist, charm his way out. No, he needed to be exposed, fully, publicly, in a way he couldn't escape. The perfect opportunity came sooner than I expected. Javier had organized a dinner party at our house, a gathering of his colleagues, business partners, and friends. He loved these events, standing at the head of the table, basking in admiration, weaving his image of the perfect husband and successful man. That night, as guests arrived, I played my role flawlessly. Smiling, pouring wine, greeting everyone as if nothing were amiss. Javier, smug as ever, slipped an arm around my waist, whispering, "See? We make the perfect couple." If only he knew. When dessert was served, I stood up, holding a glass of champagne. "I'd like to make a toast," I said, my voice calm, steady. All eyes turned toward me. Javier smiled proudly, thinking I would praise him. Instead, I connected my laptop to the projector, And one by one, the lies began to unravel. First, the photos. Javier and Isabel in hotel rooms, restaurants, always looking over their shoulders, but never careful enough. Gasps filled the room. Javier froze, his smile collapsing. Then, the bank statements, the hidden transfers, the shell accounts. The men in suits shifted uncomfortably, realizing they were watching a colleague's empire of deceit. And finally, the recordings. Javier's own voice, cruel and mocking, boasting about how he would leave me with nothing, how he controlled Isabel, how he always won. His words filled the room like poison. Silence followed. Heavy, suffocating silence. Javier shot up, rage twisting his face. "Clara, turn this off! You don't know what you're doing!" But I did. I knew exactly what I was doing. "Do you hear that, Javier?" I said softly, my voice carrying over the stunned crowd. "That's the sound of your perfect lie breaking." He lunged toward me, but two of his colleagues held him back, disgust flashing in their eyes. Isabel, standing near the door, looked pale but resolute. For the first time, I saw relief on her face. The dinner ended in chaos. Javier shouting, guests whispering, reputations shattering. But for me, it was peace. Within days, the consequences followed. The firm distanced itself from him, clients withdrew, and divorce papers, backed with irrefutable evidence, stripped him of everything he tried to take from me. And when the dust settled, Javier was left alone, exposed, his empire of lies reduced to rubble. I, on the other hand, walked away stronger, freer, no longer the woman in the shadows of his deceit. Sometimes, breaking something, a vase, a lie, a marriage, is the only way to discover the truth. And this time, the truth had destroyed him, not me.